There is no secret ingredient in this chili. There never was. That isn't modesty. I've had people offer me money for it. I had a man follow me out to my truck after a church supper in 1998, certain I'd left something out. And the thing every one of them was after, the one item they assumed I was hiding, does not exist. What I've actually been hiding for 40 years is that the ingredient list is boring, and almost nothing that makes this work is on it. Most chili fails in the first 8 minutes, before a single spice touches the pot. And once it fails there, nothing you add later can repair it. Not more cumin, not more heat, not another 3 hours on the stove. I'm Hollis Ward. I'm 63 years old. I've been making this same pot since 1986, and today you're getting all of it. The list, the order, the temperatures, and the two things I have never written down for anybody. Start with what chili actually is, because most people have it filed wrong. Chili is not a soup, it is a braise. Tough meat cooked slowly in a small amount of liquid until the connective tissue breaks down. That single classification governs every decision that follows. Braises get browned first. Braises use barely enough liquid. Braises never boil. Treat it as a soup, and you'll do the opposite of all three, which is exactly how most chili gets made. The confusion has a date on it. Chili con carne is not Mexican. It's Texan, and specifically, it's San Antonio. From the 1880s, women known as the chili queens set up tables in Military Plaza after dark and sold it by the bowl to anyone passing through. They were shut down by health ordinance in 1937. Then, in 1894, a German immigrant named Willy Gebhardt, working in New Braunfels, Texas, ran dried chilies through a modified meat grinder 3 times and produced the first commercial chili powder. It was a real convenience. It also quietly deleted the technique. Before Gebhardt, you handled whole chilies. That meant toasting them, soaking them, tasting them. So you learned what each one actually did. After Gebhardt, chili became a spoonful of brown powder out of a tin. And within 2 generations, most American cooks had never held the raw material of their own national dish. Buy a chuck roast and cut it yourself into half-inch cubes, not ground beef. Ground beef has enormous surface area relative to its mass. It cooks through before it can brown, and as it cooks, it releases water. That water pools in the pan, and the meat sits in it and steams. Steamed beef is gray. It will be gray in the finished pot 6 hours later. What you're after is the Maillard reaction, the browning that happens when proteins and sugars rearrange under heat, first described by the French chemist Louis-Camille Maillard in 1912. It needs a dry surface, and it needs roughly 300 degrees Fahrenheit to run at any useful speed. Here's the trap. Water boils at 212. As long as there is standing water in that pan, the surface of your meat physically cannot exceed 212 degrees. You are 88 degrees short of the reaction you're trying to cause, and you will stay short until the water is gone. So, pat the meat dry with paper towels. Salt it. Work in batches small enough that the cubes aren't touching. Let each batch sit undisturbed for 3 minutes before you move it. You'll know it's working when a dark crust forms on the bottom of the pot and refuses to let go. That crust is called fond, and it is not burnt. It is the single most concentrated flavor in the entire dish. You'll lift it off later with liquid. The chili itself is the ingredient people replace without realizing they've replaced anything. I use 3, and each one is doing a different job. Ancho is a dried poblano. It runs 1,000 to 2,000 Scoville heat units, which is barely hot at all. It's there for depth. It tastes like raisin and coffee and old leather. That's your base. Guajillo is a dried mirasol. 2,500 to 5,000 units, bright and slightly sour, closer to strong tea. That's your top note. Chile de árbol runs 15,000 to 30,000. It contributes almost no flavor. It is there for heat and nothing else. That scale comes from a pharmacist named Wilbur Scoville, who in 1912 diluted chili extract in sugar water until a panel of tasters could no longer detect it. The modern version uses lab chromatography. The name stuck. 4 anchos, 3 guajillos, 2 árboles for 3 pounds of meat. Stem them, shake the seeds out, and toast them in a dry skillet, 30 to 45 seconds per side, until they puff slightly and smell like tobacco. Do not let them blacken. Burnt chili turns bitter, and there is no correcting it. You throw the batch out and start again. I've done it twice. Then cover them with boiling water, weigh them down with a plate, and leave them 20 minutes. Blend them with a cup of the soaking liquid until it's a smooth paste. That paste is what most people think comes in a jar. It doesn't. And I'll come back to what heat actually is later on, because it is not a flavor. It isn't even a taste. The full recipe, quantities, chili ratios, timings, is on one printable page. Link is in the description under this video. That's the only time I'll bring it up. Here's the step almost nobody does. Capsaicin, the compound that carries chili heat, is fat-soluble. So are most of the aromatic compounds in cumin, oregano, and paprika. They do not dissolve in water. Put ground spices into a watery pot, and much of what you paid for stays locked in the powder and passes straight through. So after the meat comes out and the onions go in, you put the dry spices directly into the hot fat, alone, and stir them for 45 seconds. They'll darken slightly, and the smell will change completely. That's called blooming, and it's the difference between spices being present in your chili and spices being dissolved into it. This explains something you've experienced your whole life. When your mouth is burning, milk works, and water doesn't. Water is the wrong solvent. It just moves capsaicin around your mouth. Milk carries fat and casein, which bind it and take it away. Render beef fat or use lard for this if you have it. The fat is not a neutral carrier here. It's the delivery system for everything else in the pot. No water, beef stock, and barely enough of it. The liquid should come up to about 3/4 of the depth of the meat, not over the top of it. This is a braise. Cover the meat completely, and you've diluted 6 hours of work. Beer is optional. If you use it, put it in early. Hop compounds turn bitter over a long cook, and after 3 hours you'll taste it. For thickening, at the very end, Masa harina. Not flour, not cornstarch. Masa harina is corn flour that's been nixtamalized, cooked in an alkaline solution, traditionally lime or wood ash, then hulled and ground. That process goes back at least 3,000 years in Mesoamerica, and it does more than soften the corn. The alkali releases niacin, vitamin B3, which in untreated corn is chemically bound in a form humans can't absorb. That detail has a body count. When corn agriculture spread through the American South, without the nixtamalization step that came with it, pellagra followed, niacin deficiency. Between 1906 and the 1940s, it produced roughly 3 million cases and over 100,000 deaths in the United States. Joseph Goldberger showed it was dietary in the 1910s. Niacin itself wasn't isolated until 1937. 2 tablespoons of masa, whisked into a little of the hot liquid first, then stirred in. It thickens, and it adds toasted corn flavor at the same time. Cornstarch only does the first one. If your chili is bubbling, it is too hot. You want 185 to 195 degrees Fahrenheit. One bubble breaking the surface every 2 or 3 seconds. Lid on, but set slightly ajar. The reason is collagen. Chuck is full of it. That's why it's cheap and why it's the right cut. Collagen is the connective tissue that makes tough meat tough, and it converts into gelatin, which is what makes braised meat feel rich in your mouth. That conversion begins around 160 degrees, but it is governed by time, not temperature. More heat does not speed it up meaningfully. What more heat does is squeeze the muscle fibers tighter, forcing out moisture, so a boiled pot gives you meat that is somehow both tough and dry at once. People taste that, decide it needed longer, turn the heat up, and make it worse. Gelatin is also your real thickener. It's why a good pot of chili coats the back of a spoon, and a bad one runs off it like broth. That body comes from collagen you converted, not from anything you stirred in. 3 hours minimum, 4 is better. There is no version of this that takes 90 minutes. Everybody says chili is better the next day. Almost nobody can tell you why. 4 separate things happen in that refrigerator overnight. The fat solidifies on the surface, where you can lift it off cleanly or stir it back in as a proper emulsion. Warm, it's just grease floating on top. Water-soluble compounds keep migrating. The gradient between the liquid and the inside of each cube keeps equalizing for hours after the heat is off. The masa starches finish hydrating and set, which is why the texture changes overnight, even though nothing was added. And the harsh volatile compounds, the sharp raw edges off the onion and the alcohol from the beer, off-gas and leave. So the final step in a 40-year recipe is to make it, taste it, and put it away without eating it. That's the thing people were trying to buy from me, not an ingredient, a delay. Now the thing I said I'd come back to. Capsaicin has no taste. Your tongue's taste receptors do not register it at all. Not as sweet, sour, salty, bitter, or savory. Chile heat is not a flavor you are perceiving. What capsaicin does is bind to a receptor called TRPV1, a protein sitting in your nerve endings whose actual job is to warn you about dangerous heat. TRPV1 fires when your tissue crosses about 109 degrees Fahrenheit. Capsaicin fits that receptor and switches it on directly, at room temperature. Your nerve sends the identical signal it would send if that food were physically burning you. Your brain has no mechanism to tell the two apart. That's why it builds and then fades. That's why you sweat. Your body is running a full response to an injury that is not happening. The scientist who worked this out is David Julius, who used capsaicin as the tool to find the receptor. He shared the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2021 for it. Somebody won a Nobel Prize for explaining what happens in your mouth when you eat a bowl of this. The next video is about rendering your own lard at home, which is the fat I brown this meat in, and it's the cheapest ingredient in my kitchen. If you want to be here when it goes up, subscribe now. So there it is, the whole 40-year secret, laid out plainly. A browning step that everyone rushes, 3 chiles instead of 1 powder, fat before liquid, a temperature that never boils, and a night in the refrigerator. Not one of those is proprietary. Not one of them is even new. Most of it was ordinary practice on Military Plaza in San Antonio before anybody thought to put it in a tin. What I was actually keeping all those years wasn't information. It was the willingness to spend 6 hours and 1 night on something you can buy in a can for $2. So do this tonight, with what's already in your kitchen. Open whatever chili powder is in your cabinet and smell it. Remember that smell. Now put a tablespoon of any fat, butter, oil, bacon grease, in a pan over medium heat. When it's hot, drop in a teaspoon of that same powder and stir it for 45 seconds. Don't add anything else. Smell it again. Same powder. The only thing that changed is that it finally met fat. Use it on whatever you were already making tonight. That's the single step that separates flat from not flat. And you didn't buy a thing to do it. Now settle something for me in the comments. Beans or no beans? And what state did you grow up in? I already know how those 2 answers line up. I want to watch it happen in public. A recipe is only a list of things you can buy. Everything that makes this pot worth eating happens in the hours after the shopping is done.